Hi, everybody. I'm Fran Spielman, and with me are two of my treasured colleagues again. Tim Novak, our investigative specialist, Mark Brown, our political columnist. Have you ever seen a week like this?
It's pretty
Wired up. Danny Solis, the zoning chairman against Ed Burke. 2 years. Tim?
It's stunning, very stunning. The depth of your imagination is probably not big enough to think of all the things that probably were recorded.
Mark?
You ask if we've ever seen anything like it before. I imagine if we thought back on Greylord, that week was probably similar. But the weeks that you and I and Tim all think are ahead of us here in this, no, I don't think we've seen this.
How big is this likely to get? It seems like a snowball rolling downhill.
Well, we now know that that the feds were up on a wire on Danny Solis as far back as 2014, confronted him in 2016. If he's been cooperating throughout that period of time, he controls the zoning, which is a central function in the government, and also a place where a lot of crooked stuff can go down if that's what's going on.
That's what's so unique about this. Two power players, two parts of the Chicago power structure, one wiring up the other 12 times or more, and Danny was in a position to put Burke with the people he needed to pitch the legal business to, right, Tim?
Correct, but Danny was probably also catching other people on wires besides Ed Burke. Before they confronted Danny and he agreed to cooperate, it appears the feds had like 20,000 phone calls with Danny. There's perhaps a similar number with Burke. You're looking at 40,000 phone calls.
Oh my God.
Just with those two guys. So somebody described Danny to me as sort of a freelancer in City Hall, just wearing a wire on everybody anywhere in the building.
And let's talk about what Danny did. Nobody runs into the federal government and says, I want to wear a wire. So what did he do to get caught and to be in this position so that he had to turn on his colleagues?
Well, we now know that the federal agents had a search warrant that they were going to execute back in 2016 that laid out a series of things. Some very embarrassing things, like Danny allegedly would go to massage parlors that were arranged by a friend/lobbyist who allegedly paid for them and also supplied Danny with Viagra.
A lot of it.
Yes, and in exchange for this, the government alleges that this lobbyist was pushing Danny to help him with one of his clients, which was a street sweeping company that was using city water and was facing exorbitantly new charges, and could have effectively put them out of
Elgin
business.
Street sweeping, which
Elgin
is
Street
another
Sweeping.
fixture with the
The
Cacciatore
Cacciatore
family.
family, which also has incredible real estate interests in this city,
Right.
And in Danny's ward. That's just the tip of it. They also allege there were just a number of other things where, Danny kept a list. His staff allegedly kept a list for him when he would go to make fundraising calls of what he had done for somebody, and these things inevitably would come up in the conversations. It wasn't necessarily, I'll do this for that. It wasn't necessarily spoken that clearly, but it was always it was sometimes in the same sentence, sometimes in the same discussion. Oh yeah. Can you come to my fundraiser? Can you give me a donation? And oh yeah, I'm really working on that for you. It's just
Now,
very bad form.
He's told associates he thinks he could have beaten these charges. The one thing he couldn't beat was the massage parlors. They had him coming in, they had him leaving, and he was going to have to resign in disgrace, lose his aldermanic pension. And so he agreed to cooperate, thinking, even though the other things he had explanations for example, Fred Latsko, let's talk about him. Danny Solis got free use of the Oprah Winfrey, formerly Oprah Winfrey Farm in Indiana for his son's graduation party. Who's Fred Latsko, Tim?
Fred Latsko is a guy who used to be Sid Luckman's driver. Sid Luckman, the immortal Bears quarterback.
Wow, we're going back.
We're going back. Fred Latsko was a bold-faced name in Cup's column for years as someone who drove Sid around. The last thing Rod Blagojevich did before he left office was he pardoned Fred Latsko. He expunged his criminal record.
Whoa.
So Fred is a developer who's done a lot of things on the Gold Coast. Barney's on Rush Street there was a development by Fred. During that project, Fred submitted a check to City Hall for about $850,000 and it bounced. So Fred is a guy who has a checkered past with the city. He's in a lot of different developments with a lot of big-time developers. At some point, he bought Oprah's farm in northwest Indiana for, I've heard 20 million. No, I'm sorry, about 7 million. And he would lease the farm out, but Fred has told us that he did not charge Danny Solis rent when Danny used the farm to have a graduation party for his son.
And Danny's explanation is he and I were friends, we traveled together, I didn't know that he charged people, he offered something as a friend to friend, and so he thinks that he had an explanation for that.
He does, but the federal agents found that there are a series of votes in the zoning committee where Danny voted to approve projects that Fred Latsko was involved in. So Danny can say that, but the feds are kind of laying out there was a quid pro quo here.
Right, but he feels that he will someday be hailed as a hero for maybe bringing down a very important part of the Chicago power structure. Is he dreaming? Is he just blowing smoke? What do you think, Mark?
I don't think he'll ever be hailed as a hero. I mean, perhaps when we see the full extent of his cooperation, we'll be grateful that he did the right thing when caught dead to rights. And, you know, obviously, I mean, I believe he's done this to save his own skin, which, you know, unfortunately, that turns the wheels of justice sometimes. You've got to have cooperators, and
you have to have something on them to get them to cooperate.
If he has made a case against some of the more powerful crooks in Chicago government, God bless him. You know, but I'm never going to hail him as a hero.
No, and certainly his colleagues are not going to. I mean, it was astounding on Wednesday. The aldermen were so stunned and so furious. The last time an alderman wore a wire on another, it was Alan Streeter in Operation, I believe, Incubator. And he was denounced as a rat and a snake and all these other things. And then Medrano got caught, Danny's predecessor in the 25th Ward, and he was a stand-up guy who refused to wear a wire. So here we are, now we have the second most powerful alderman wearing a wire on the first most powerful alderman, and everybody was so furious. It was like, don't take sides against the family, like The Godfather. What struck you about the aldermanic reaction?
I think there's a lot of fear out there because they don't know what they said to Danny during the course of these 2 years or what they were caught talking to Ed Burke on. There are a lot of listening devices that have been going on.
And probably many more around that we don't know about, right?
There's speculation that there are some other aldermen wearing wires as well.
You want to name any names?
No, because we don't know. But there's a lot of speculation out there. There's nervous people in the lobbying world. There's zoning lawyers who would deal with Danny's committee on very huge projects that are a little bit unsettled by this. So it's really has everyone taking their temperature to see if they're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, when people say good morning, you should say testing 1, 2, 3, I guess. Mark, what do you think about the political fallout of this? You've got Preckwinkle, who's really been dragged down in this because she got the $10,000 contribution that Burke muscled from the Burger King franchise magnate. And then you have Mendoza with her ties to Solis and Burke. Let's talk about that.
Well, just at the point in the campaign when we thought that Preckwinkle and Mendoza would be pulling out comfortably ahead, they've been totally stymied by this. I think it's made people understand more clearly who they are and what they're about, and even if we might think they're not corrupt the way we think other people are, they're part of the system, and they have embraced their role in the system and used it for their benefit. So, I mean, I think they're both in a real problem here. Now, we have this poll out today that shows Bill Daley surging in between that. Now, it's kind of funny to me that the Daleys, would be who we would turn to after some of the stories that Mr. Novak did during the Rich Daley years, but people are looking for, they're looking for an adult. They're looking for somebody who's seems like a leader, and Bill certainly has effectively conveyed that during this part of the campaign.
Let's talk about, just quickly, what are the Mendoza ties, what are the Preckwinkle ties to Burke and Solis?
Preckwinkle had a fundraiser at Burke's house back in January. She's now drawn into a closer relationship with Burke through some Tribune stories that show that she gave a job to the alderman's son.
Who was under investigation in the sheriff's office?
When he left the sheriff's office for that reason. You have Mendoza, whose career goes almost all the way back to Danny Solis's career. She has had fundraisers that he has arranged for her. She's close to him. She's close to his sister, who was going to have a fundraiser for her, but that's been somehow postponed. She's given back money that she's gotten from Danny, as well as the company that Danny's sister co-founded.
140 some odd thousand. That's no small change.
So they all seem to be running away from each other. The question I have is, are those candidates on any of these recordings with these people?
And back to on Preckwinkle, there is also the $10,000 donation that Burke is alleged to have shaken down these Burger King owners specifically for her.
And the meeting she had with Burke, who wanted a promotion for his son. So she admitted that this week, and she didn't look very good doing it because she waited a while to say it.
Yeah, and as far as I know, she still hasn't paid back all the money from
That's
that
right.
fundraiser, and she's trying to
use
have
it
the
until the
benefit
quarter
for the election, which
Right.
is like, I don't even know what she's thinking. I'll give Mendoza credit for that much, for at least being smart
immediately
enough to write
writing the check, right?
It doesn't take away the stain in my mind, but at least she's not benefiting further from the money.
Well, this is a full employment program for reporters. We're going to be busy for probably forever on this, and let's just see how it unfolds. We'll see you next week.